Welcome to the District216.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be there. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
So Pearly is a healer. She's a speaker, and I'm very curious about your story because the small glimpse that I have is that you have received a very special gift of energetic sight from healing potential. And I imagine that there was a time where that wasn't embodied for you. And so I would love to hear whatever you want to share with me and our audience about how you've come to this place today.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my 20s, I had a very different life where I was in finance, corporate finance. I used to gear a little bit like insurance breaking the biggest things in the world that would cross the Atlantic with 1,000 tons worth of grains and iron ore. And then I had, in my 29th year, I had, this fascinating beginning, which ended with a relationship that closed, and it was just something that I was so shattered and broken by. And then I spent about 6 months just meditating through pain and, just trying to sort of get back on my feet. And then towards the end of the year, getting back onto my feet, I was involved in a really serious accident, and it was a near-death experience, and I was just kind of birthed onto, I felt like I went into that accident as a girl and I came out a woman, and it just has been almost like a 7-year journey of rebuilding mentally, physically, and then through many iterations of using any Western medicine I honor. So it's there's a time and a place, but I hit a ceiling pretty quickly of just realizing I was in a lot of pain and I was seeing a lot of doctors and they weren't helping me. And so through many different sort of like following science of life and following the flow, it took me years to actually understand the impact that it had on my body. And then through actually going through my own burnout when I was doing a really full-on job during COVID, and then I just overcooked my nervous system, and then life took me to the Greek island called Corfu, where I'm building a little temple, and that was just like the next iteration of life brought me an error that I needed to heal. And then the Mecca of healers there, so I went through bioresonance and reflexology and naturopath, and got into psychedelics for the first time in terms of began that medicine journey there. And then I just became so inspired by the modalities that really had made such a big difference to me. And I had such a thirst for learning, and I just really wanted to educate myself. And so I've always had such a love for feet. And I remember I had a real language of love for the old rabbits. He just said, like, you're so good in sort of foot massage, I'd really encourage you to train. And so I then trained in reflexology, and I was just, I think, the wheel of fortune is always moving, and sometimes, like in my life, I've had a really abundant flow, and there was a time in my life when I was just a bit more vulnerable financially, and I just started doing reflexology out of love and the Akashan, but then it just turned me to singing mantras a lot. And I remember it was the time when I was in a little bit of I was just in a naked view with some family stuff that I just was kind of, I guess, I just couldn't get out of that sort of identity. And then I just realized I was cycling in London, and I was cycling for about 20 hours a week, and I was singing mantras when I was cycling, and it was just like I'd shifted gears, and suddenly like all this light and abundance came in. And I guess for me, it was the first time I'm really understanding how mantras are medicine music and how you can change your frequency. And actually I remember my meditation teacher, he explained to me about if you look at illnesses energetically on a retreat in the winter, especially in the UK, where many people turn up with a cold, and then by about day 2 or day 3, everyone's cold has gone because the collective consciousness of us all meditating together has gone higher than the common cold, which is like a low frequency as a disease, if you look at it energetically. So it was like, everything changed. And then I've always grown up from my mom to believe that we have a guardian angel, everyone has a guardian angel, and my brothers and I have all had close calls, and it just felt like someone was there. And so we, and I just started to try and listen to podcasts to try and educate myself. And I started to call in angels, and it was like the session started to change, but I wasn't communicating with my clients that I was calling. They would say that they would see white light going through their body, which I was seeing. And then I started to, just with friends, not with clients, just started to like play around a little bit with mushrooms and MDMA, just like to help me get more depth in the session, just with close friends. And then just starting to use my voice also like with clients, and it just felt like as a child, like, you know, for children, we'll organize play dates and dogs going dancing and things, and you know, you would sing to a child. It's like there are some things that feel so sacred, and it just feels like such a beautiful thing to sing to someone. And then just kind of developing of like just the natural curiosity for people's bodies and how I can play with them. Just like starting to pour warm oil on the body, and it, like coconut oil, and it just became this kind of sacred honoring of someone's body. And then I was with my business partner at the time, and it was the first time I started to see colors and structures in the body. And I remember he couldn't lift his arm, and there was like some gray, I could just see like gray smoke around the socket. And I just asked in a fun way if I could just play with that a little. And it was like I had this imaginary sculpture, and I just was like just cutting, and it was like this gray like cloud quality that I was just pulling out of his arm for, I don't know, about 45 minutes. And then by the end, he was fine, and he could lift it up. And then it's a little bit like a muscle. It just gets stronger and stronger. The more I see, the more I can see, and the more I do, the more I realize I can do. And then sort of building my confidence of, just realizing, like, just starting to see more patterns and actually understanding a little bit. And I've been very lucky with some really phenomenal hitters that kind of held space for me to understand the gift that's coming through me, and just help me, because I don't always understand what I see, but I can always ask for help with the guides that guide me, because it's not my gift. It's just something that comes through me, and I'm just a vessel, and I'm a channel. And so when I make myself available to someone, I find it so fascinating, because I'm always able to meet them where they are, because it just comes through me and it just comes out of my mouth. It's not from me. But then ending up just on a fascinating journey with a beautiful thought leader who's a real kind of pioneer in her field in how to approach cancer from a metabolic way. And so a lot of like podcast interviews and a TEDx talk that's just about to come out, but just sort of unintentionally developing a niche of just really working with trauma, which is really the essence of why you get sick, because the body doesn't just get sick. There's always a dis-ease, like there's something that the body is holding, in terms of like the body keeps the score, and we're made up of water, and like how water holds memory. And so it's just like continues to be fundamentally the humbling journey that I've been lucky enough to get people to have a gift where I'm able to help people in a meaningful way. Take a kiss for me, it's something I find deeply nourishing. And then, it's just like, I work with people all over the world, and it's like, there's so many different forms of some reason why you get sick, and people's like traumas and conditioning and things that they carry, just not just in the side them in before, and then sort of working more and more with mothers, because I can see the energetic bonds if someone is connected to someone. Or someone has died, like I can see them in their field, and sometimes it's not helpful, so you can remove them if that's like for their greatest good or something that they specifically ask. And so, it's just an ever evolving journey of just learning. I'm always learning, and always evolving, and just trying to trim in different modalities so that I can just continue to weave different sort of works and somatic and trauma release and things like that, combining the gift that comes through.
Yeah, that's all so beautiful. And you said so many good things that I want to revisit. The first is that it sounds like your curiosity is really what's guided you to uncover this gift that's coming through and continues to show you its potential. And so I just want to see you in how you are not so much operating from what Pearly wants out of this experience, but really sitting back and receiving what is being offered. Yeah, and I think that's beautiful and really what makes a reliable healer of integrity. Yeah. And something that stood out when you were sharing about your initial personal trauma healing after the accident, when you were cycling and repeating mantra. I feel curious to revisit that, because how did mantra come to you? And then also to define that to the audience for folks who may not be familiar. And I also just want to set like a context piece, because what we're speaking to, I imagine our audience will resonate with to a degree, but just to clarify, we're speaking to humans existing fundamentally at a vibratory state. And I feel like for some folks, they're not fully embodied in that, but something that they are simply like curious, they're playing with, or maybe psychedelics have shown them. So if there's an expansion you want to add on our baseline being vibration, and then I want to hear from you, like your relationship to mantra and maybe even how it's developed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the mantras was something that I was just doing organically, and I think if you're open to life, like you'll always be guided, and the medicine that you need or the help that you need will always come to you if you're open to it. And I think there was a mantra lounge in London that I used to go to a lot, and
did you say a mantra lunch?
Lounge.
A mantra lounge?
Mantra that I've met every Fridays in London in Covent Garden, which is a very cheap little one for all the parts of London, little couples and streets everywhere.
It sounds really magical.
Yeah. And so there's a mantra lounge, and it's all like delicious, like bee cake that everyone is. There's a really the soul and heart behind that community. And just the energy always, for anyone who has experienced those like mantras, the energy afterwards was always so uplifting and inspiring. And I love singing, just like reconnecting with my voice, which I haven't really done since I was at school. And and so it just really changed my life actually without being dramatic. And just, give me just a new understanding. And I think going back to what you said, which is I sometimes wonder why it is that the path that I lead, which is this quite unusual gift, which I still, it's but really different when Zach Bush, he's really held such a space for me, but you kind of just understanding. But I think when you set an intention to serve and to try and honor people in a meaningful way, and I think we were having a go, but it's as much as I can, I try not to associate with mine and what I do, and I just like do the work, and the results always wonderful, but I try not to connect to that too much. But I think there's a prayer I've said for so many years of like, God, angels, please use me. And I open the space, there's a whole lot of prayers that I do for that perception and things like that. But it's always like, please use me as a vessel. And then it's just to try and let the person that I'm connecting with. And so I think, for me, I think that's how I've ended up. Just the gifts that kind of want to wield and come through me, and just so is that like childlike curiosity of like what wants to come through, and just keep like calling in and being open to that. And something else that's like I think in line with that, which is, and I was discussing this morning about it, which is like if you ground what you're trying to do in the higher purpose, the universe will always support that. Which we can, and I'm happy to continue the conversation on that. But because there's also a place in Greece, it's like some land that I've been lucky enough to serve, which is a Kensington and olive grove, which cascades down to the water with its own little beach, and it's like I've been lucky enough to sort of help birth this temple based on geometry and symbolism and biogeometry, and like, this right overlooking gateway to Atlantis, of which I'm sure there are many, but it's just like I kind of have to pitch myself up like wondering, and I think it's just because of that prayer that I've done for so many years.
Well, it definitely shows like your service to others and your faith in your path is fruitful. And I would love to hear if you do want to share about these ancient modalities that you're calling upon in your practice. whether that's in your client work or in the curation and at your temple in Greece. Yeah, just more about what you're weaving with.
I mean, I think so learning to work with angels, because what I always say to people, it's like we're substituting their work for me. I'm connected tissue, that's kind of key, but it's like there's so much that's coming through me, and learning like with Isis, then they reminded and then coming into my field and learning to call them in, and then also work from Archangel Gabriel, who I always work with. He's the angel of white light. And then also I keep working with Archangel Michael, who's the angel of protection. And then there's a fascinating podcast which I think might resonate because some of you here called the Emeralds podcast. And there's this wonderful, very evocative, kind of quite wild episode which is called Protectors and Guardians. And it was the essence of it, is that in life we have people that have good intentions and are good, and then we have people with bad intentions who are bad. You want to be kind of black and white about it. And in the ethereal realms, it's the same. And so I see sometimes, like, it's very normal for me, not every session, or like every week could be 600 sessions, I'm putting entities out of people's fields that are connected to shadow, which, some of them are benign and it's fine. But then some of them are like really not serving you, and they could, it's actually just quite normal. It's just that it's like, just we pick stuff up as you go along. And so, for me, it's like just learning to call in certain prayers, and it's like, it's very easy for me to remove things from people's field, but it's really fascinating. And also when people have died, perhaps they can still be in people's fields. And sometimes it's like if you have a mother that's perhaps challenging and actually it's really not serving you, or like, there are just sometimes you can see certain figures in people's field that perhaps you can always, obviously I always ask, or there's messages that can come through. So I'm just sort of like a conduit. And I find this so fascinating because when I chat to people at the beginning, it's sort of like, how can I help? Where are you emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, sexually? Like, what's important to you? And then we just keep going through the layers of like, is there anything else that feels important to you that you would like to share with me? And then like, I just start to see colors and structures, and then by the end of it, I can inevitably stuff that's come out with when you were let go, because that's why they say it looked like some massive trauma with their parents, or some sort of accident, or perhaps their parents went around and they felt very unsafe, or things like that just really stayed with the body. And so, and then lace down the line, and then I'll, once they finish, like I'll start to open the space, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to say some prayers for a couple of minutes, and then the invitation is for you to lie back and just allow the medicine to carry you, the medicine of the music to carry you. And then I shut off my camera, and then I have my other phone, which I then dictate in, but it's just like, close my eyes, and I just like this mass of like colors and structures, it's kind of labyrinth, like just working through the layers and all this insight and wisdom and clarity. And then we have a sharing at the end, obviously, but it's so fascinating, and especially when you really can light someone up, and especially someone who's on quite a significant health challenge, and their understanding of like where that's come from. And actually it's the trauma of when they were 8, or like just whether I can see in the field, it's really obvious seeing it, just helping them connect patterns, and ultimately working in the electromagnetic field of the body, which is a little bit like Reiki or acupuncture. So I'm just working at that level point of how physiology and biology occurs. And ultimately supporting the body to return to its original design. And because it's not me healing up, it's like I'm removing what's blocking the body, and then the body comes forward to heal. And it's kind of perfectionist and piece of how it goes.
Yeah. I think it's so important to differentiate, and I think psychedelics can have a similar benefit where it's not necessarily making additions to create improvement, but it's actually bringing away what is waiting or blocking someone from the free-flowing energy that they ultimately have access to at the baseline state. Yeah. And so I would love to zoom in a little bit more to talking about the electromagnetic field and like what is actually happening to someone who experiences something of high impact, traumatic in their early life or at whatever age. and what is happening at a vibratory state, and then also how that manifests maybe in their psychology and in their biology.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to a little bit what I touched on before, which is the body keeps the score. There's that Brennan book. And I'm building a little Japanese water tank. So I've looked into a lot of like structuring water. And you can structure water with intention, but it's like there's a brilliant Japanese scientist who played music, rock music to water as it was freezing. And then he looked at it molecularly. And then under the microscope, it was like all the molecules were just all over the case and there was no sort of symmetry to them. And then he did another experiment of playing classical music to the same water. And then it was like a perfect symmetry. So it's just about how when in speaking to someone who's like in a significant health challenge and you're actually just, because it's just obvious to me, because I see patterns again and again, having done this for quite a while, that it's something that was from like way before, that's the pain, that's like the dis-ease in the body of fundamentally, we're obviously made up mainly of water, and I see things in water a lot. And it's like water, when left alone, will ultimately always return to stillness. And it's like, that's just kind of what the body needs in terms of, that's why we have to sleep, because the mind disturbs our body so much. And so if you can just help to bring people back to stillness, I can often guide it to put them into like a luminescent water in a lake and just hold them. Rather like you would hold a child, like cranial sacral, which I goes to train it. So you hold the head of the body in the sacrum, and it's like when a soul first comes into being, the first thing is the fluidity of the spine. That's the first thing as we take a human form in the 3D. And so often I'm just guided to hold them, because also there's so much healing comes that when we're witnessed and seen. So it's like a prayer I always say with people. It's like, just know that you're in a space where you're witnessed and seen, and in a place of unconditional love. And like, I just think it's something that really, it's kind of the soul always responds to.
I'm also thinking about, as we're developing, we're in the waters of the will. And so there's an association to safety and nourishment being held there. Yeah, water.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating that with safety, because I think that's an issue for so many people. And actually with my own experience, which is like, I didn't feel safe as a child. And where I carried is around the heart, and I can't use neck and injuries. And they were both, one was in the front of the body and one was in the back, but it was just around the heart. So here's the place where I was not feeling safe, was ultimately the place where I took a huge impact on my body in a very unsafe experience. And so it was just really, it's such a perfect manifestation of like, so often if I'm like with people on a breast cancer journey, and it's always like there's mass pain that's happened to them around the heart when their mom, their mom's been often, and they get breast cancer on the left side is feminine. Or like, or if it's the right side and they're really and they're masculine, their father's been off them. So it's like, when you start to look at it, it makes a lot of sense to you, and I can see and work through the body's same language.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm appreciating getting to know you more through the way that you speak about your work. And I also was hearing you describe earlier the introduction of mushrooms and the MDMA to sort of experiment with how that maybe supports your energetic readings.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, what you track when you are exploring the support of psychedelics.
Yeah, I mean, I never knew that psychedelics could be a medicine until life took me to a little kind called thru. And that's where I started to do mushroom ceremonies with it. And it's heavenly mushrooms that are real husnight. Thank you. But it was like, anytime I do a mushroom ceremony, it's just connection to source, and the body will heal you in any way it needs to heal, even if it can be quite violent. And for me, like, I shake a lot, and it's like, I feel like I'm in a tumble dryer. But like, I was lucky enough to go to the Brazil rainforest for a month with an extraordinary medicine man called karaoke. You made the 10 ceremonies, and the amount of injuries that left my body in that time was just like, yeah, it's such a deep and subtle shift. And then, yeah, it's continuation of using mushrooms, it's medicine. It's just like, it's a connection to source, and the mind gets out of the way and you can just really heal the body and like, just so much like clarity, downloads, visions. And I think MDMA, it's slightly different medicine, of like more open in the heart. And it can be used in a few different ways. But yeah, I just think if in terms of like, I had a friend who's a beautiful therapist that called space with me for about 5 hours with an MDMA ceremony, and with like the amount of clarity, because fundamentally with MDMA opens the heart, but the amount of clarity and just layers of like just vision of like what's the best course, like what you should do. But I also, for anyone who's kind of ending a relationship with a beloved or that's just a loved one, I think something I couldn't recommend more is like, I had a relationship with a beloved for many years, and like when he ended, I asked him if he would be open to doing an MDMA ceremony, and it was just such a beautiful closing. And so we met, and it was like an altar in flowers just to represent, but it was like this deep sharing of like gratitude for what we had shared, gratitude for gifts that we were giving each, and then what we found we were taking away. And it was just such a beautiful way to honor what we had shared, and just honor all the moments and the memories. And so just to close in a way that the years spent, what I could wish for any couple of your kind of ending a partnership that's been meaningful to you. But yeah, so I think there's so many different tools and medicines. I think there's a lot of medicines here that I'm learning about, aside from MDMA, that you can use in many ways.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because I feel usually people come out of partnership and then they close down their heart, whether if they know it or not. And there's this like holding of grief or resentment that really weighs them and maybe does manifest as illness or dis-ease. And so this idea of closing out a relationship and maintaining that open-hearted state not only is like a more productive way to structure one's energy, but is supporting one's vital health and well-being. And so I was actually curious if there's anything that you can like recommend or suggest for folks around how to cultivate more health in their vibratory state. Of course, sessions with you are available, or support from another healer of your kind. But is there anything that you can suggest as far as like lifestyle practice?
I think movement is the best person, really. I also think of the gratitude is really golden ticket if you want to go down the Willy Wonka. And in if it's a British thing or it's American, there's a bit like I think like I have an incredibly positive mindset. And I have a life that's full of a lot of light and a lot of joy, but it wasn't always that way. And I just know that rather like the power of compounding interest, it's like, I'm sure any of you are familiar in like a personal relationship or business relationship, it's the little things that you do every day that move the dial. And so for the last 10 years, I've been doing all these little things, like I wake up in the morning and before I look at my phone, and please none of you look at the news the moment you wake up. But it's like the way you set up the morning is the way you set up your day. And so it's like, I always say, it's like clients, it's like you can really change your life today, and it doesn't involve any money if you just start with your thoughts, because it's our thoughts that create our reality and the filter of how we see the world. And it's like the Buddha said, the wise man controls his thoughts. So it's like, what are you feeding your mind? It's like, yeah, okay, food is great and it's really important, but it's our mental diet that has more of an impact than on our food. So like another thing I'll say to clients often, which is like, would you allow the key to speak to you the way you speak to yourself? And maybe that's something to reflect on. Or it's like for people who are sick or I'll be working with them and they'll go, I always have a neck pain. And it's like, can you just stop for a sec? Like, how many times every day or a week or every month do you tell you like, oh, I was so sick, or like, oh, I have I have like cancer, I have this, and it's like not from a place of any disrespect of like their experience. It's like, can we just reframe that? Because biology, the body follows the mind, and everyone is familiar with the placebo effect. So it's like you just want to be prone in the body, and just like let's just switch it to it's like I'm on a journey with my health just to help bring my body back into more alignment. And it's just like you just want to like every thought counts and every word counts. So it's like wake up, and I just have such a list of prayers that I go through, which is it's neurolinguistic programming, which and around meetings been coming in now with manifesting, which is being mainstream. But like I have like a really strong record with manifesting some pretty big intangible things in my life, and it's like I always every morning it just goes you from a place of gratitude in the present tense, what it is that I'm calling in, like anything from business to like, and those programs can change all the time. And there's other podcasts that we can also listen to where I talk about this. So I'm very happy to continue the conversation afterwards. But yeah, and it's like there's an angel card called Faith, which is about it's like faith moves mountains. But don't have blind faith in people or conditions, but it's like trust comes up divine timing and just acts as if it's already happened. And then really all programs are done, so they happen, but it's just away from like the smallest thing to like ending up having my little beach. It's like, yeah, some pretty big tangible things. And it's just the essence of it is the same, whether it's from your health or to money to whatever it is that you want to achieve. And I for me, it's like I've always had massive dreams, but I have like so much faith that I 100% would achieve whatever it is that I'm focused on. And so, yeah, I was so encouraged to dream big. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the energetics when you were like describing the dangerous mantra, like affirming one's illness.
Yeah.
And how that like actually creates stagnancy. Whereas when you claim your healing and your development and that you're on a journey, then there's like energy, emotion again. And I can see how that can really impact one's biology.
Yeah.
Claiming that narrative.
Yeah. It was really fascinating for me actually, but like everything that I learned, sometimes you can still go down like the rabbit hole. And I remember it was like with the accident experience that I had, and it was like physiologically every 7 years, the body is totally renewed. Every cell of the body is renewed, but you're a completely new person. And if you look at numerology, we run in 7-year cycles. That's like the 7-year itch that you see in relationships. It's like you're changing, and it's like I always find it so fascinating to look at relationships at them. It's like so often it's around 7-year mark, like 7, 14, 21 years. But with the body, I remember I came to the end of the 7 years. And then my body started to deteriorate in a way that like, it was just so disheartening. And it was like 36 and then in a lot of pain. And just like for the first thing, crying about the experience and anything that I've been through. And then there was just a Buddhist friend who was just like holding a really beautiful space for me to enable me to heal. And he said, sometimes this is what happens. The body will break down just before it comes forward to heal. And actually that's been my experience, but it was like, but I also realized like what I was focusing on was that I was in pain, and it was like, I'm in pain, my back hurts, I'm in pain. I was like, hey, stop, I need to reframe. And he was like, there is no reason that your body should still be in pain from the accident. Like, it's not, like, stop. And so now, like, touched on it a little bit now, but normally I don't really talk about it. I just say like I had a experience, it's a near-death experience, and that's the framework that I use because every thought counts and every word counts.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you hold that experience like with honor, but not needing to go into the details. And I see people's addiction to retelling their trauma, and it's very visceral for me as an empath. And I'm so glad to know that there's other healers like yourself really empowering people to claim new words and sitting back into that feeling of what it is like to restructure one's experience to sensation or their lived reality just through the narrative that they're owning.
Yeah, well, because it's a little bit like I sometimes say to clients, such as your mind is like a garden, and anything you focus on will grows. It's like don't water weeds, and don't allow whatever we think about expand. So don't allow, especially we've all met those people that it's like their victim narrative of like the illness becomes their story, and one, it's like quantity boring, and two, it's like they just don't have the clarity and the foresight to be able to understand what they're doing, and it's just like they're just in this loop and they spend their whole lives on this train of thoughts, which then become their reality of like, oh, my mother abandoned me when I was tiny, but at 58 was like died at 20, buried at 70. So it's like you can't just want to give them a slap around the face and like, oh, bitch. Elegantly.
But yeah, sometimes this is to me. Yeah. I noticed this show up for me in my relationship to time. And I see this in boats a lot too, when they say like they don't have time for set spiritual gratitude manifestation practice in the morning. And I do my best to correct myself. You're like, oh, I haven't been prioritizing that recently. Or like, I hasn't been inspired to choose that as a priority or whatever it is. So I want to offer that to folks too, to see how you're really into time.
Yeah, and I think also with them, like when we're half asleep or what. So Carl Jung, who is considered one of the great psychologists of his time, if you look at your mind as like an iceberg, and you have your conscious mind, which is above the water, which is like 1/5, and then the subconscious, which is below the water, which is 4/5. And so it's the subconscious that's running the show. So if I were to say to you, what's 2 times 2? We would all say 4 as an automated response. It's not something we need to think about. It sits in our subconscious. But if I were to say to you, what's 12 times 14, 12 times 27, we'd all have to sit here and think about it. And so like the way to get things into your subconscious is like iteration is your friend. So it's like when you're half asleep or you're half awake or you're having an orgasm, that's the easiest time to access your subconscious. So it's like first thing I do when I wake up is like my womb breath. The last thing when I go to bed, it's like all the things I'm grateful for that day. So it's like my mental diet is so strong that like I've had some pretty big experiences, but like I've been able to hold them. So it's like an analogy I also give with clients that I'm working with, which is if you think of your mind as like a runway, and it's like, is it like a Heathrow runway in London, biggest airport, one of the biggest airports in the world, where it's like the biggest plane in the world will land every 90 seconds and it doesn't shake? Or is your mind like an African bush runway where the biggest plane will land and it's just a complete shit show? And so it's like, you know, I had in such an amazing way like this relationship that ended that I was just like so shattered and broken by it. But then I had 6 months being at the gym, just meditating and just getting my mind to just be really still and really strong. And so when I was in this like surreal, absolute experience, I was just like so clear, like this is okay, like this is not going to be my identity, like I'm going to be fine, like, you know, give myself some time, but then it'll be good. And so it's like when you see people like how we live, we all get dealt a set of cards. It's like, what's your mental and physical constitution? And some people are born with like physical constitution of an ox, but it's like, what choices do you make every day to strengthen or weaken your mental and physical constitution? And that's the way you can really start to shift. And that's when it's like all the little things you do every day, like stretch, move, like connection, community is kind of everything. That's what we're all statually born. That's how ultimately we used to live. And like doing things that nourishes you and like eating good food and having like a good mental diet, but like what you allow into your into your field. And like the 5 people that we spend the most time with, we're a product of. It's like who do you surround yourself with? And like, yeah, just being a little bit mindful of all those little things that really move the dial long time.
And I feel curious, like, because Curly is still a human, and she sometimes has, the getting human, she's about to come in. How do you respond to different emotions or different thought forms as they do come in? What's your method in working with those things?
And in real time, I have a lot of tools, and I'm pretty calm generally, but like I have an amazing tapping tool it's on my Instagram, which is like so if I ever feel triggered, which obviously we all do, we all have the human experience, but it's like a 3-minute tapping tool, which is like such a huge cranial and vagal input of like bringing 80% of the body, especially the heart and the lungs and the gut, into a parasympathetic nervous state. And so through that, or through like a cold shower, or through shaking the jawbone. And also like if I ever feel like I'm being attacked, or even there's something that's really, then I can just call in protection prayers. Generally, we really have to continue the conversation about. So there's like certain protection prayers that you call in. Yeah, I mean, gratitude and exercise are the two things that will also, and I'm lucky enough, treat your pearls, being on always on islands by the sea, and back home you'd be staring, I'm right by the water, so that's actually my biggest medicine. You do about a bit once a summer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing influence in your world and your practice. I do soon want to turn to the audience to hear from you. So start to find your question if you want to ask it directly. But before we do so, I want to hear a little bit more about the clients that you're working with and what moment they're in when they find you. Because what you're offering is a kind of niche and specific energy healing service. So what are your clients like? What's their state when they come to find you?
It's quite varied actually. So I also work, because ultimately I'm a channel, and so when I make myself available to someone, the stuff will start to come through. So I work with trauma, or like grief or anxiety, and really good anxiety. But I also work in a more sort of, there's a couple of late stage founders that I work with, and they just use me as an advisor. So some of them are separating from their co-founders, and I can just guide them. And I also work with the energetic landscape around business projects and before meetings. And there's a couple of legal cases that I also been asked to help with. And again, it's just the same. Like I can see the energetic landscape around the people, because ultimately it's just relationships, and I can see the bonds between them and anything that might be blocking fields. So yeah, it's pretty varied and like pretty fascinating. And sometimes like there's a big property developer in the UK that I'm working with at the moment, and it's like names and numbers have meanings if you look into numerology. And so it's like helping to guide them on like the right names for the company, because certain numbers have higher vibrations, and like I guess you could call it the principles of feng shui. But this just all this stuff, and if you look into like geometry and symbolism, it's like, which is the basis of how architecture, like true architecture, is around. Look at the temples, especially in Greece and around the world, they all carry certain symbols. And so, yeah, there's all this stuff just comes through as and when it's like true to the person I'm connecting with and making myself available to. So it's like, it's very varied by client base. And so, yeah, anyone who's in pain, any sort of physical, emotional pain is very easy for me. And then just being an advisor and a sample, because it's just a connection to source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. Well, I would like to give space to the audience to ask their questions during the next 20-ish minutes or so. We have a mic for you.
The mic crack.
Thanks, Jacob.
Mike Freckle. Hello, Jared.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for doing this work, the energetic work, and it's also the work with subconscious and neuralistic programming. That resonates with me very much. I've done a lot of work on forgiving in my life, and I talk to people about it, and I just got so curious, like the energy in the body with the people you're working with, how much or how often does that have to do with forgiveness, needing to forgive? If sometimes those negative energies, a lot of do they ever talk about they're able to forgive one of their abusers after your session, after you pull some negative energy out? Like, how often is correlation?
I mean, forgiveness is due to the experience that they've had, but then also what can happen sometimes, which is when we go through a mental trauma, a chemical trauma, emotional trauma, it's held physiologically and energetically in the body. And so that also uses its own pathways to heal and repair. And what's happened in a lot of our cultures today is that we've lost, in many cultures, those fireside, like those daily rituals that will enable that things like fireside song and dancing, ceremony, ritual and the like. So what happens is we get trauma that's stored, but it's not just in this life, it can be stored generationally. So sometimes they're dealing with generational trauma that's not just in their life experience. So for forgiveness, for example, like, especially within family constellations, and especially if someone has died, but they're dealing with a disease which is from a mother who passed, so it didn't hold them in the way that they needed. And it's like, okay, it's like the Buddha said, if you pick up a hot coal to throw it at somebody you're angry with, like your mother who's died, it's like your hand that's get burnt. So it's like it's you, that's the energy is inside of you. It's the disease is manifested as a disease. And so there's like the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is a Hawaiian prayer, where you can energetically care things with you and that other person. So there's like different practices. This is stuff I can see on your left neck, by the way. Yeah, so there's different practices that you can do to help to clear energy with someone, or like the left is the feminine side. So yeah, these like that.
I love it. I have two more questions. Okay, so I did want to ask about your consciousness during your near-death experience. Is that something you're open to talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, did your consciousness go to a higher density of consciousness?
So we had a white light experience. So everything just went white. And then I was on the floor in London. And then I think it feels like, so I was a Mike's Bike TED to do a TEDx talk, and it did a lot of research on what they call cross-border phenomena, which have been studied in this Dr. Bruce Grayson. He's like a leader in the field in Virginia University, and it's actually a lot more common than you realize, of like people who kind of come close to the veil. It's like a portal that opens, and I work with portals, and it's like that's just when guests started to come through, of like waking up in hospital with like a heightened sense of awareness that took me years to understand, and then like to start to work with, and so it's been very changing.
Did you at all get any sense that like the next level of consciousness is just pure love?
Yeah, I mean, to me, consciousness is, it's a loving intelligence that sits behind our lives. It's just waiting for us to show up. And a friend of mine, he used to work in ICU. He just says, like, especially there was one day where there was 3 people that he brought up to life, and they each said exactly the same thing, which was, why did you bring me back? And it's always the same, because it's actually our mind that causes so much distress and disturbs the body so much. If you go back to remembering that we're made up of water, and it's like the people that had tried to stay awake the longest, so there's like, and I'm getting you in a world record, so like not sleeping the longest, and actually they get mad, because it's just like the bodies can't handle it. It's why we need to do this repair and heal.
Last question.
Ding, ding,
Do you ever find that unhealed trauma or unhealed lower energies can affect certain organs in a person's body? Say, for example, the stomach, what would that represent? Or is there any connection to that? Is this person different in that area?
So I can see some anger in your tummy.
I think I'm such a lovely person.
But it's like, for example, this grief, that like the lungs grief, is classic to be in the lungs, or like, for example, if I'm out working with someone he's having trouble with their side to run the eyes, it's like, what is it that you don't want to see? Or what is it that's painful for you to look at? Or it's like if you're ever working with someone around the ears, it's like, what is it that's hard to hear? And so it's just always a perfect manifestation of like the body will always kind of talk to you in its own hidden language that sometimes certain people that are translating their lives. Didn't that resonate?
No, yeah, I had some pretty severe stomach issues manifest at 19 years old. Yeah, it's still dealing with it.
Well, we can continue the conversation on that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very public. You were mentioning Jung and so much of the subtleties below the surface. So in our healing, often the first thing, because we're sort of mind and verbally oriented, we get into therapy. And when we surface something out of the subconscious and we're able to name it for the first time, what then?
What's your question?
The question is how to move past just the verbal and the mental and our own practices and move past the healing. So just sort of manifestation. So it seems that there's often a block, just sort of like, oh, I named the trauma, I found the thing. And then what are some of the practices to move past that?
So if you can identify the trauma, like so often it's from a tiny when we were 18, often it's like when we're less than 7. So if you can identify that, it's like there's two sides. One is the wound or the pain, and then it's like, what's the cause? It's like, well, with cause, Western medicine works with its symptom. So the cause is like with the wound from when you were, let's say, 7. And you want to connect to that in a child when you're 7. So like one practice that I had is my screensaver is a picture of me when I was little. So like little boy. And when I wake up in the morning, it's on my alarm. It said, "Kick Pearly, what do you want to say to me?" And it's a like one of human exercise, but it's like when the inner child is triggered, like the amount of mayhem and chaos and relationships that we can handle, stuff that we can just like cannot deal with this pain that's been triggered. And it's always like when anything's ever triggered, it's like, where does that come from? What's arising in me? It's like that person has triggered, and our relationships ultimately just mirrors and reflections of the wounds that we still need to carry, because what we give out comes back. And so if you can work with that inner child when you're around 7, and then just like keep connecting to, and there's also systematic practices that I can guide through where you just connect to that child, and you've been amazed what that child said to you, like, you just want to feel held, you just want to feel safe, you just want to feel seen, or can you just take me away? And if you can just keep building your relationship with that inner child, and then that's like, it's kind of the fastest pathway to heal. And then we can do all the other stuff, like stop talking about it, stop identifying it, don't do the bits and narrative. But yeah, a bit more answers. Like,
That's super helpful.
right.
I noticed in the talk you mentioned, my name is Dan. Thank you for this. I noticed in the talk you mentioned water a number of times, so the water loses memory. Both of you were discussing water in the womb. It was mentioned water in the spine as well. And you kept touching on this already. I don't really have any specific question, but yeah, like water, if you could put word it out.
Well, I think just going back to fundamentally, like the body would always keep score. And so when something happens to us, like unless we find our own pathways to heal and repair, then we'll hold that trauma. And like as you get older, it's like if you look at meditation, you have like, this is the water that one, you have like all these minuses. Some people not so much, but you have these minuses below the surface. And it's like over time, they just sort of come up. And the more you do meditation or different sort of healing work, you manage to turn those minuses into a faster like process and let them go. But it's the water in our body that's holding it. And that's because it's the water that holds memory. So for example, I'm building a Japanese Watsu water temple, and the essence of that medicine is it's a water temple that's at 35 degrees, which is the temperature of the womb. So you can do this extraordinary work the way you have someone holding you. And I would so encourage everyone once in their life to have a Watsu session. It's really extraordinary. And you have someone that's holding you, and they're so in tune with the breath, and they're taking you under the water, but fundamentally it takes you back to the womb. And it's about water holding us unconditionally. It's about unconditional love. The water will hold you, whatever color you are, whatever size you are, whatever gender you are. And so, yeah, you can just work with the water and just these deep rooms of like many of us that have unconditional love. And also the water will show us things that you can't see on land, like if babies are, like if you have one leg longer than the other, it's much easier to see it in water. Or for me, it's like, I think there's many ways to be a mother, and there's, you can work with babies whilst they're in the mommy's tummies. So the water Watsu worker, then I am building this temple to support her worth and to kind of honor mothers and my way of being a mother in this life. But it's like she can work with the babies because they can hear her voice, and then she delivers them. So it's just like a beautiful symbiosis, and the water's the medicine.
Quick follow that you think of this is also in cultures of religions, like in Christianity with that freedom, or in Hindu and Indian culture with the Ganges River, things like that. That's just something that I just thought as well, probably has a spiritual and healing connection as well.
Yeah, I mean, different elements have different meanings. So like water is an element, cleanses and clears and washes away. So whenever I do a session before or after, I'll always wash in water, wash my hands in water. Or like when I did ayahuasca for a month, we always used to go to this waterfall, and it was like the first time of really understanding water as an element. It like cleanses, it clears and washes away what isn't serving us. But then if you do it with intention, so it's like the basis of any ritual or ceremony is with intentions, and where intention goes, energy flows. So it's like step into the water with intention, or wash your hands with intention, or like when we wash in the shower, it's like, yeah, just kind of makes everything a little ritual.
I'd like to add that I'm happy to recommend Watsu practitioners in Santa Barbara. Yes.
Check. Hi. First of all, I'm relating to your nonverbal communication with your hands because I work with little children in water.
Right.
And I relate to that. What I wanted to ask you about the unconscious part of your world, and you did beautiful description of the iceberg, because in working with them, I don't have a lot of answers for what may be conscious-minded with them, but they're sharing their innocence, and I'm triangulating that with my own and my own childhood trauma to my dreams for the answers in order to be present for them. So I'm fascinated about the conscious-minded things you're doing, and I want to know what your dream process is like, if respectful.
So if you ask me about dreams a month from now, I might be able to guide a little bit more. But my dream process, I don't know that much about dreaming, lucid dreaming, astral travel. Like it is a state of consciousness that you can absolutely develop and work with. But it's not something I'm familiar with, and it's not something, it's not my modality, it's not what comes through. And so for me, I just make myself available to someone, whether it's a child, and it's like, I just am able to kind of just see if a body's hidden language in a way that it's like it's nonverbal communication. And then if that helps a little bit,
Well, as I listen to you actively, to me, your lucid dream in what you're doing, your presence is I relate to it that way because I had a friend who went into the light and it was like being in the presence of an angel to be around her.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I guess what I would say is like I'm just able to operate in different realms and drop into different places very easily and just kind of thankfully switch it on and off. So I don't get overwhelmed. But yeah, just like colors and structures and just being able to see things that other people can't, and like people who've died or working with children through mothers, and because I can see the annotated bonds between them and you're connected to, and like really fascinating. Actually, more recently, I started to work more and more with people like Zach or another brilliant for either in cancer space where I don't need to. I only need to have spoken to someone for a minute or two, and I can just drop into the annotated landscape and just like start to move something around if they're in pains, or just cancel something like a video. They had a headache for 4 days, but I haven't actually spoken to them, and I'm able to now work with that, which is like to me, it's like, and so fascinating. But it's the essence is the same. You can just connect, and I also work with animals in the same way, which is case knows like joy. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing your gift to us.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, thanks for coming. So for someone who wants to start working with the angels, what's your number one book recommendation for heading down that path?
That's a good question. I need to dig it. I need to dig it up. There's some angel cards that I love by Diana Kuboch, give you the different angels and the different what they represent, because different angels represent different things. And so that would be actually a really amazing starting point, because then you'll understand and you'll find one that will resonate with you depending on where you are. And also angel cards are really fun in a way of like, if I ever need guidance or support, I'll pull an angel card and it holds like bow on how so that would be, I think that would be the best starting point to kind of educate and to start to see which ones resonate in the heart.
Hi. Will you chant or sing or speak a prayer or a mantra for us? We could do some prayer.
I mean, usually when I could do a prayer that I open space with when I work with people. And the prayer, so the prayer is, so you could just say, God, angels, please use me to serve and to honor the soul in a meaningful way. And then I call in Isis and Mary Magdalene and just ask to be surrounded by a mirror of protection. And then I call in Archangel Gabriel. So as I'm working with this person's field, that I be filled, that as I'm working with them, their field is filled with the golden white healing and vitality and light. And then I call in and I ask their guides to help me and my guides to heal them in any way they need to heal and let go anything they need to let go of. And then I call in Archangel Michael, who's the angel of protection. So I just ask him to fill and surround me and the person working with electric blue fire to transmute any low vibration energy before it reaches your auric field. And then I ask to close there in my body, like symbolically, aesthetically, physically, and that both of our bodies are powerful, invincible, healthy, closed bodies. And then I'll open a portal. So asking to open a portal that any low vibration is transmuted, it goes up and never returns. And then that's when my space is clear and I'm protected and they're protected. And then I begin.
Thank you.
Hi.
I have a question. So Our feeling express more of emotions like grief and frustration. And I want to know like how we can process the grief because that is the most difficult emotion. My father died in India. I do actually Chongkai, say Tirthapalima. And so do you recommend the ayahuasca ceremony or past life regression or any special things how to deal with grief?
So I'm not familiar with past life regression. That's not a modality that I've used. Only with grief, there's many stages to grief. If you look at sort of its anger, hurt, upset, acceptance, and then letting go. But one of the things is like the analogy that I find really helpful, which is it's a version of things that adds fuel to the fire, and its acceptance is the water. So it's to try and like be with your grief and honor it. So it's like, okay, if we think of if we think of the experience that will bring the feeling of grief to arise, and then it's like, where is that grief in your body? Where do you feel that in your body? It's like, it looks above your heart on the left. And it's like, okay, how does that feel? Is it hot or cold? Is it rough or smooth? Like, what's the sensation of that? And like, the more you can just be with it and sort of meet it with equanimity and kind of just develop that emotional agility, and that's the way that you can support the body so to allow it to heal. Yeah.
If you could only say one thing that you feel would be most helpful for everyone, given what you were from being an empath and being a seer, what would be?
Gratitude. Really, honestly, it's like, it's not so that kiss method that just keep it simple, stupid, like, just if you can really just see life through filter of gratitude, and it's like, it's just this like beautiful vibration. It's like the love vibration is super high, of just like self thoughts that create your reality, filter of how we see your world. Like I touched on before, it's like, it's just such a beautiful way to like glide through life.
Thank you.
So I have two questions. One is, so when you're doing your work, you're referencing structures and colors, and I heard you say sides of the body, which would be masculine and feminine, which would give you some guidance. Getting really granular with the structures, is that something that others see as well? Is it something specific is emanating from something, or you think that's just what you're seeing and feel?
So what I see in someone's field is very specific to them, and it often looks like weapons in a field, like hooks, arrows, anchors. Like I did a session with someone, and an anchor, when you see an anchor in someone's field, it's like an anchor fundamentally holds something and drags it down. So it's like if you're dealing with trauma, it's like they can't move on because it's like it's anchored in their body. So it's like, or for example, if someone is in acute pain, I'll often see it as shards of glass in the back of the heart, or shards of glass, but often it's like when I see stuff around the back of the heart, it's like the same snake stabbed in the back. And sometimes you do see knives in people's field that you can remove. So yeah, it's deeply individual, just true to their experiencing it, their trauma or where they are. But yeah, I don't think that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'll ask one, well, maybe two more questions really quickly. One is, if you're working, like as a clinician, and I work with patients, the pace of the way I work with them is essential. So I'm not going to bring up trauma on day 2 or 3 or 4. Sometimes it's much later when they're prepared to deal. So are there cases, or how do you know when you're doing a microsurgery, removing something that you see, if someone's ready, or what happens if they're not ready, if you have some sense of that?
No, it's a great question. So I'm always guided. What I do, everything is guided. And so sometimes I'll see stuff for example, if you're working with cancer in the body, I often see it as an energy that's moving. And so it's unstable. And actually, I was speaking to a brilliant doctor about this to try and understand what it was seeing, like for it to be mirrored in her world. And because when I see an energy that's unstable, I'm like, it's such a no. It's like, no, I cannot remove that. And so what I'm often guided to do is like build like a foundation, like a little foundation platform underneath that stable energy. And sometimes because the essence of cancer is that it's lost communication and connectivity. So sometimes it's like I'm guided to build like almost like electricity wires to like allow me communication and reconnectivity. And then I have to like go through and it needs some time to give it stability. And then I get the green light and able to remove it. And I was chatting to my doctor friend. She was saying, yeah, if you just remove from people's bodies, like, you know, surgery after surgery after surgery, and the body just collapses and then people leave that way. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting. So, yeah, it's always like, I always get clear, yes, or clear, no. Or if I see something I don't understand or I don't know how to, I always ask for guidance and I'm always sure. But you can't remove everything.
Can I ask about that? Is there any more questions?
I was going to ask one more, but that's really quick. Maybe this isn't fair. So an emphatic no is fine. So for all those Santa Barbarians here who are in the room together, is there something that you're reading here in the energy in the room that you can speak to? Maybe if that's an emphatic no, you know, just with all of us here, then say no.
Well, I can feel a sense of like intrigue and curiosity. And when you're working with people, it's always on to them. Yeah. Rosenstein, New York, yeah, but she's been doing about Egypt.
I was appreciating what you were saying about cancer. And then with a period of my life where I was training with an alchemical healing teacher in my 20s, and she specializes was working on cancer. She passed away from cancer, but she helped a lot of people with cancer before that. One thing that struck me that she taught me was to go into the field, into the space in the vibrational field, and to invite that person to open up, not me, invite them to. I'm sharing this in hopes that you might get some guidance or clarity. She invited us to work a lot with how to plant a garden in the areas that opened up, and to have the person actually quite involved in the process of how they were planting, what they were planting in that space. It changed the frequency very palpably in the space when we were working at that level with that in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting to me because not always, but the last session I did actually was someone I was guided to plant trees, plant seeds, and seeds represent growth of something new. And so, yeah, so I very much understand.
I guess I just wondered, because you mentioned your experience in the cancer, what I heard you say is that it's great as a fragmentation kind of field, yeah, or a fragmenter. And I have had experience working people with cancer as well. And I wonder, I've also found out with people with mental health. So I guess I wonder, with the dis-ease and that sense of fragmentation or disassociation that can happen, how to invite, do you just work with pure light and water, or are you inviting in a particular, you said you're working with that, archetypal energies as well. Thanks, wondered if more you can add to that.
I mean, it's very specific.
Yeah.
Whereas and like very detailed. Along when I channel, I dictate just because there's so much details, and then I can stay present. So it's really like there's so many different layers of like calling in angels, doing a prayers that I just that. And then fun tendency, because I am just making myself a video, so wherever they are, I'm guided to meet them and like see whatever colors and structures and whatever comes through me, not from me. And so, and often what I find is what I see, they also see. So there's like a very direct mirror when we do the sharing at the end, which is always kind of satisfying. But also really interesting. But yeah, and then I can help just to ground them and the whole thing and what I've seen so that they understand. You just like, I connect the dots for them. So it can help and enable them to understand their own healing journey and perhaps why they got sick.
Kiki.
These will be our last two questions from these books.
Right. You talked about this transformative white light experience that you had. You say how that happened and what happened?
Yeah, so I had a kind of perfect storm of actually had two near-death experiences. I'd actually had two near-death experiences, but I had the perfect storm when I was on some contraception pills that was thickening my blood. And then I had a knee operation. And then about a month later, I was just finding it increasingly difficult to breathe. And then I was trying to get a boat and I was on crutches and I was about to miss it. So I was kind of trying to move quite quickly. And then I just collapsed on the street and everything went white. And then some people kind of very kindly came to help me. And then I was found to have blood clots in both of my lungs. Age 25, shook a bit of a shock. But yeah.
Was it a positive experience?
And what I would say was a massive gift because it set me on a path of ultimately being able to really help people in such a meaningful way now. So I mean, be kind of grateful for what happened, that my overall experience of what came through kind of coming quite close to the veil.
Hi, thank you. Really fascinating. My question is about the connection with animals. You say that we can, that we communicate with you, but it's mainly domestic animals or wild animals. Is it like a common message that you're taking?
It's actually the same for me with being able to just tune to and it's as it feels in the sea where the biology of their body is being blocked from returning to its original design. So, yeah, the essence of it is it's actually the same, and I can just see what I can see, and then I'm guided, know that I'm guided.
So they have stories of trauma, just like in music.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah, fundamentally.
I'm walking. So thank you, beautiful audience, for your curiosity. Pearly, before we transition to our Change Your Lens rapid fire, I want you to tell the people how they can continue to connect with you. I know you mentioned some podcast resources, but if they want to stay in touch, what's the best way to do so?
So you can find me on Instagram under Pearly Montagu, a Pearly Way of Life. If anyone wants to connect with my work, I am doing a special offer for the community where my sessions are normally $650, but I'm doing it special $250 off. Or I also have the scholarship program as $30, so I can hopefully support me if I can there. And yeah, lots of podcast interviews, and there's a TEDx talk coming out this week, I think. Yeah.
What if you don't use that Instagram? Is there another way?
If you don't use Instagram, I don't know. I have. We can connect on WhatsApp. I also have a website called mandalay.org. It's manderley.org. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely. So, as our audience is familiar, at the end of every interview, we ask a handful of rapid fire questions. So, we'll see how many we have space for. The first is, if you were stranded on a deserted island, but you have the opportunity to read one book, what would you be reading?
It would be Usher's Book of Secrets.
Oh, very fun. And if you could also listen to one album, what music are you listening to?
It would be Fleetwood Mac, Rumors.
I love when the audience gets it. I'm pulling up my list here. Okay, great. And do you believe in an afterlife? And if so, do you feel that psychedelics give us closer connection to that afterlife?
I think my experience with psychedelics is you can go to really wild and ethereal places, but with the afterlife, it's not something that I'd experienced, or it's nothing that's ever come into my field.
And can you please describe one of your most impactful psychedelic experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I in the rainforest in Brazil, doing 10 ceremonies in a month was deeply transformative. You know, so many energies that left my body, and it's something that with ayahuasca that you feel the call. You know if you're ready. It was just a deeply humbling extraordinary journey. It's like I bow to anyone who's done ayahuasca. It takes a lot of courage, and it's like a big journey and a half. But it's, I think it's an extraordinary mess, and for the right person that doesn't have, I think it's like psychosis and stuff like that. You should to ayahuasca with everything else. It's like and support and courage.
And my final question is, please, to the best of your ability, will you please describe the nature of consciousness?
Oh, good.
Actually, it's just that we live in a world, but there's the loving intelligence that sits behind our lives. It's just waiting for us to show up.
You look sweet. Thank you, Pearly, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the journey to Santa Barbara. And thank you, Danny, for bringing Pearly to us. Shout out this amazing full house. I hope you all come back again next week for a special tour.